Hey, welcome to Battleground Believers. So excited to be back in the studio, and believe it or not, Matt Carter's back with us. Welcome back, bud. So glad you're here. Makes it feel like the whole family's together. And want to thank you, the audience, for being a part of this. And remember, we're on all kinds of streaming sites: YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Amazon Prime, maybe. We're on a whole slew of them, and we're on TikTok, Facebook, and we do have a email address, battlegroundbelievers@gmail.com. We are starting to get people to react with us and react to our stuff, talk to us, and that interaction is really good, right? But today, Mike Miller, right? Ex-cop, Bluffton Police Department?
Yes.
Okay. Ex-cop, Bluffton Police Department. And again, our tagline is telling his story through your story. And so today, Mike, we're going to let you tell your story, tell God's story through your story, really. And so welcome. Thank you so much for being willing to come in on a Saturday morning, and especially on Valentine's Day, and be a part of this. This episode won't come out on Valentine's Day. I need to stop doing stuff like that. But anyway, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
What we'll let you do is we'll let you kind of start wherever you want and tell your story, and just have a conversation about what the Lord's done in your life. How's that sound?
Yeah, I'll just give a little background, I guess, of me. I was, like you said, I was a police officer in Bluffton, Indiana, for almost 25 years. And I retired in September of 2020 and took a position within the police department as the 911 director, which that whole thing has changed a little bit. The dispatch center is now its own department. Before that, I was kind of still under the chief of police. Now we're our own department. So I've been doing that for just a little over 5 years. So still able to be in public safety, which I absolutely love. But it also creates a lot of hardship in your life, I think, dealing with things. So,
well, yeah, dispatchers, that's a tough gig, man.
Yeah. So, I started out as a dispatcher in 1991. I had just turned 21 years old, and I got hired as a dispatcher. And from there, 4.5 years later, I got hired as a police officer.
You weren't born yet, were you?
When?
91?
91.
Yes, I was.
Oh.
So,
I was a sophomore in high school.
I'll be 40 this year, bro.
So, I started as a dispatcher. Now, kind of full circle. I'm back with dispatch. There's a lot of similarities, and like I said, just sometimes the sights and the sounds and the things that go on can affect you. On the police side, on dispatch side, EMTs, paramedics, fire. I mean, they all deal with the same stuff. So,
but you were an actual police officer, like
I was, yeah.
pull people over.
Yeah. And being that it was a small agency, and Scott Gillum, who was on the program a couple weeks ago, or
actually, his episodes are still going on right now. Wow.
We worked at the same department, and it's a small department, but there's still a lot of stuff that goes on, and within those small agencies, you have everybody kind of has little, I don't want to say part-time jobs, but there's things that people need to step up and do. And one of the things that I did was crime scene. I went through the Indiana State Police crime scene investigator training.
Oh, wow. So you've seen some stuff over the years.
I did that. I think I started in 2004, and I did that for 14 years as part of just what I did on the department, along with I was a field training officer, and I was the manager of the field training program for many years. So that was kind of my focus and my love. I really, really enjoyed the training and working with the young officers.
Yeah,
it was,
totally.
And I enjoyed that, but that's really not what I'm here to talk about, I guess. But
we're here to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
And I always tell people, I just kind of have a boring story. For as far back as I can remember, I mean, I was baptized as a infant. My family, I grew up in the Presbyterian church, and we didn't go to church maybe every single Sunday, but we were in church a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I think it's really cool to talk to people and to hear how they had, as an adult, they had this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And, I always feel bad. I don't have that. I was kind of just always raised in the church. And,
I wouldn't feel bad. I heard, and I completely agree with the statement, the greatest testimony ever is to fall in love with Jesus as a young man and live your life for the Lord the whole time. Because I carry guilt and shame, even though I shouldn't.
yeah.
And there's things out there that happen and people I know I hurt. And you say it's boring, but man, imagine how much guilt and shame. Not that you didn't have things that you experienced, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean? People that go through bad stuff or do bad stuff or make bad decisions, there's consequences and pain and suffering.
Yeah.
Not that you didn't have some of that on your own, but I wish my story was more like your story.
Okay.
But it's not.
Nobody's ever put that spin on it before, but that's cool.
So when you're sharing your gospel, you can say, you should have done it like me, but since you didn't, let me tell you about Jesus. I'm kidding. Don't say that, but yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just growing up through the years and the church that we went to, the Presbyterian church that we went to, it wasn't in Bluffton, it was in another small community, and we didn't have a huge youth group. I mean, there were a handful of kids there, but when I was going through communicant classes, what they were referred to in the Presbyterian church, or at least that church, where I was in the 8th grade, getting ready to become like an adult member of the church. The pastor that we had at the church, I mean, he was awesome. And, we would have our classes, and then we'd play hide and seek throughout the whole church. I mean, it was just a fun time.
Mm-hmm.
But then as I got older, went through high school and that, I met my wife in our freshman year of school, and she had went to a Lutheran school in another county, but it only went up till to 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
But she lived in Wells County, so that meant when she got done with the 8th grade, she was going to have to come to the school in the school district where she lived, which was Norwell. And so we met our freshman year, and I was on a podcast earlier this week with our mayor and a city councilman, and they wanted to know how we met, and I said she was at volleyball practice and I was at 2-a-day football practices, and I walked in the gym, and I was with one of my buddies, and I'm like, who is that blonde over there? And that was the first time I saw her, and I don't know, I must have tricked her or something, but she's been with me ever since.
So how many years you guys been married?
We just celebrated our 33rd wedding anniversary.
Whew.
But we started dating when we were freshmen in high school.
Wow.
So yeah.
Isn't that like how long they said Jesus was going on the earth?
Yeah, Jesus was
You get married as long as Jesus walked the earth.
That's right. Yeah. So.
Well, that's pretty. I mean, it's crazy because our society now, it's not like that. It's like,
right.
People are like 33 years. You can get out of that, right?
Yeah.
That's how people are now.
I'll tell you, I didn't make it easy. That's for sure. She's a saint. And it's funny, the people I work with, they're just like, your wife is just a saint. I'm like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. She's put up with a lot. So over time, I started going to church with her. My wife is Dawn, by the way. Started going to church with her and her family. And they went to a small Lutheran church in Adams County. And shortly before we got married, I decided to leave the Presbyterian church. I joined the Lutheran church. And we attended that until just that church until about 3 years ago. But so.
Oh, wow, you've been Lutheran for a long. My grandparents were Lutheran.
Yeah.
So.
And it was a great church, and we didn't leave that church because of any problems. It's just it was in northern Adams County. We live in Bluffton,
mm-hmm.
and it's a Missouri Synod Lutheran church. There's a small Lutheran church in Bluffton, but it's not a Missouri Synod Lutheran. And we went to it a couple times, and it just didn't feel right. So we kind of decided we wanted to go to church in our community, mm-hmm. and be able to serve people in our community. So we made the decision that, you know, we were going to look for a new church, and we found a church. We love the church that we're at now. We go to First Church of Christ in Bluffton, and so excuse me. Yeah, the Lutheran church that we went to, the pastor that we had, he married us. He baptized all 3 of our children. He confirmed all 3 of our children, and he went on and married 2 of our children. And we have 3 kids. 2 of them are married. The 3rd one is not. But so, you know, we were there for a long time. Pastor was great. But I just felt, for me personally, like I felt like I'm going to church. I'm doing what I need to do. And looking back, I think basically all I was doing was just checking the boxes. Like I wasn't, I go to church, you know, listen to the service. There was nothing else.
Right.
And, you know, that's on me. But I don't know. I just felt like, yeah, I've gone to church my whole life. Something's missing, you know. And I would say that being a police officer, and there just was a lot of negativity that probably played a lot into maybe how I was feeling. And I know I was a pretty difficult person to deal with, and that's why I say my wife, she's a saint, because she put me in my place and kept me under control a lot. But I was a difficult person, and I felt like, you know, there was a lot of hate in me, and, you know, I just had feelings like if I dealt with you at work, I was respectful, but I would just, like, my interaction with somebody who had committed, you know, say a domestic battery, I'd be respectful with them when I was dealing with them, but, you know, there was just a lot of afterwards, like, just hate, like,
you had no outlet for
right.
That Darren Denny, mutual friend, he was in the show, and he had talked about that, you know, when he was home. That's why he doesn't want to go out, because he didn't want to deal with people, because that's all he. But it sounds like you had no outlet to let the tension and the pain and.
Yeah.
You'll have to forgive me. I'm still dealing with this cough, Randy.
and then, you know, this is just how it has it just kind of developed, and over time, you know, and I'm gonna speed up here just a little bit to the men's retreat that we were at the, was it Sunrise?
Yeah, Sunrise Church. Yep.
And the 3 gentlemen that spoke, how that, you know, they'd all been to prison, and I can't remember the one guy's name, but he was talking about how he was in the county jail waiting to go to the state prison, and a chaplain had given him a Bible, and he's like, I don't even know where to start. And the chaplain was like, I'd start at John. And he goes, the one thing that hit me was before I went to the state prison, he goes, I was joyous. He was incarcerated, but he was joyous. Like he had, you know, really dove into the Bible and had been studying. And, you know, here I am. And I shared this with Darren while we were sitting at the table. I'm like, not all of the years that I was a police officer, but a lot of the years I was a police officer, there was no joy, and I was miserable. And I mean, there were many times I felt like I caused more issues with people. Like, yeah, I you know, we showed up and say we had a domestic battery or whatever it might be. We took somebody to jail, but it's like, did we fix a problem or did we just make it worse for, you know, it was very hard. There wasn't, I had a hard time understanding that sometimes. So almost like I was disillusioned with what I was even doing. Like
during that time, did you have a prayer and Bible reading time for yourself?
No.
Okay.
No, and that's what I was saying. You know, I always went to church, but outside of church, I never did anything. And you know, I look back now, and as a father, you know, I was I was not the role model, the father that I should have been when my kids were younger, in leading the family in, you know, Bible reading or, you know, whatever.
Right, yeah.
You know, and for a lot of their time when they were younger, I was on second shift. So I didn't see my kids in the evening very often. And there were a lot of times I'd come home for dinner and it would get interrupted and I'd have to leave. So, you know, a lot of regret. And I think that, again, that looking back, that played into a lot of that feeling that I had. And I just was a very negative person. I wasn't always nice. I mean, I could fly off the handle pretty easily, you know. Around other people, I maybe looked like I had it together, but I didn't.
I was gonna say, when you were going through that time, when you went to church, did you all of a sudden, going to church, put on that halo, hey brother, and then
I'm sure I did.
come home and be like, I'm glad that's over.
Yeah.
Not that you walked away from God, but
Right.
sometimes we carry a different persona at church because we don't want people to, we don't want to let down the guard and let people help us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And I also came into law enforcement at a time where you didn't, as a guy, you didn't share your feelings.
Yeah.
And things are so different now. You know, there's all kinds of, you know, whenever there's a incident that is really bad, you know, there's debriefings and you get to talk to people and to just help your, you know, your mental well-being. And that was frowned upon. You know, if you couldn't handle things, you were weak and you shouldn't be in this business. And that changed during my career and for the better. But the one incident that really changed things for me was January 18th of 2015. We just got home from church. I had changed clothes. I was wearing my IU comfy pants, getting ready to watch an IU basketball game.
Nice.
Popped a bowl of popcorn, and my phone rang, and I was a dispatcher. And at this time, I was a sergeant on day shift. I was a crime scene investigator, and I'd gotten a phone call from dispatch that said that there was a missing 3-year-old autistic child, and they just needed some help, you know, locating him. So, you know, I got dressed and headed out, and it was cold. Like, it was freezing cold that day. And when I showed up to the scene, the one officer that I spoke with had just gotten off the phone with a gentleman from another community south of us whose brother called him and told him that he had done something really bad. And so from the time that I got called until I showed up, things changed in this call. This was a lot different. And long story short, the brother who had called and talked to the police officer, his brother, a friend of his, and his girlfriend basically had murdered the girlfriend's 3-year-old son and then disposed of the body. And so obviously we're trying to find this little boy. And I ended up calling in the state police crime scene also. I mean, this was not something that, as a small town crime scene investigator, I mean, I did a lot of property crimes, you know, that kind of stuff. I worked on 2 or 3 homicides, but I never did a crime against a person by myself. I mean, like, I'm going to call somebody else in. So state police crime scene showed up. You know, we kind of met up and discussed some things, and to start out with, we still thought, you know, we didn't know all of this to start out with, so we were still looking around the neighborhood trying to find.
So there's hope that the baby was still alive at this point?
For some, and that was part of my problem. I carried guilt. It was the craziest thing, because it's like at that point, I'm like, we're not gonna find this kid alive. But I'm instructing everybody, hey, we need you to go look under decks. We need you to, you know, look here, look there. And so looking back after talking with people, you know, I realized that I did not have any hope that we were going to find him alive. And, you know, I had people tell me, it's like, well, that was your experience and this and that. But, you know, it was like, no, I was just a negative person. I don't know. You know, it's, there are still things about that whole incident that I don't understand. But so we start processing the scene. And there were two different scenes. And the first scene was the home. And I remember sharing with my wife, you know, it was pure evil in this house. I mean, you know, we're going from room to room and discovering things. And, you know, these people, they didn't know what, after they'd killed him, they didn't know what to do with him. And they tried to dismember him. And even though he was a little guy, they realized it's very hard to dismember a human body. And so
probably messy too.
Yeah, well, yeah, and they had a big plastic drop cloth that they used, but then they ended up just wrapping him up in that and put him in a drawer of a dresser in a bedroom for a day. And talking with my wife just a couple years ago, I just remember as we were going through there, this overwhelming sense of just evil. I mean, it was awful. I had never experienced anything like it was a weight on me. And so we're finishing that scene up, which the thing that was crazy is, you know, there was a meth lab in there. They later went in and took swabs of the walls and that, and the levels of chemicals from making meth in this trailer was unbelievable. And there were two little kids living in this trailer. So it was just a bad scene, bad situation. And so as the day went on, our detectives from our department and our sheriff's department got involved, and they hooked up with the detectives in another community where the brother who had made the phone call, his brother was in that community, and they went and picked all three of the suspects up. And over time, they finally came clean with what had happened. Now, this started for me at 1 p.m., and this was about 10 o'clock. We finally got word of where we needed to go to find him. And it was a very rural area in Wells County. And what they had done is they'd they'd wrapped him in a blanket, put him in a cardboard box, and doused him with fingernail polish remover and set him on fire in this wooded area. So we arrived out at that scene, and it was just me and the crime scene investigator from the state police, and it was so different from the trailer. And this is, you know, people think I'm weird or whatever, but I felt the presence of God out there. Like, it was a very calm and almost surreal feeling, but it was so different from the trailer. Even though we found his body, and the only thing that was recognizable as a person were his toes. Everything else was burnt. And even though that was hard, the surrounding, like, it was so calm, peaceful, and there was like 6 inches of snow on the ground, and it was snowing at that point. It was quiet, and the change of feeling on me from being at that trailer to this scene, even though there was a horrific thing that took place there with this little guy, the feeling of peace that came over me. And I kept thinking, you know, this little guy does not have to live in pain, and grow up in whatever situation he was going to be growing up in.
Did you feel like the Lord, maybe the Lord was there?
I did, yeah. And that was probably the first time in my life that I'd ever had that feeling. And I'm getting goosebumps right now.
Yeah, I am too, to be honest.
I had never experienced anything like that before. And, you know, it was crazy. And so, I thought, okay, we've done our job. We'll get things finished up. I think I ended up getting home 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then had to turn around and go back to work. And thinking everything was fine. And about 48 hours later, man, it hit me. Like what I had done, what I had experienced, everything that I had gone through, and I hit this depression. Even though we had a couple debriefings. The first debriefing I went to, I thought I was having a heart attack, and I had a panic attack, and I had never in my life had anything like that. And so that was the start of about a year of mentally, I was not in a good place. I was suicidal.
What was your relationship? Did you have a relationship with the Lord, or was it kind of like, hey, I'll see you on Sunday?
I was very lukewarm.
Lukewarm?
Yeah. But one thing, years and years ago, when I first became a police officer, I went to a training, and they talked about whenever you have a stressful day at work, go home and do something to relieve that stress. Mow your yard. And when I mow my yard, I get mad. Like,
yeah,
like I stomp out my frustration when I'm mowing. I need some physical. But the one thing they always stressed: don't drink.
Yeah.
And I never did. I mean, I drink, but I would never ever drink alcohol after a stressful day. And the thing that I fell back on was my faith. What little bit there was. I mean, and I told my wife, I said, I need to talk to our pastor. So the pastor at our church, I don't even know how many times, but he came to our house. And because I did not want to go out. And, my kids were playing sports. They all swam. They were on the swim team. And I'll never forget, like just a couple days after all this happened, they had a swim meet. And I did not want to go. My wife made me go, but she protected me. She put me up against a wall so nobody could really sit around me. But the problem was everybody knew that I was a police officer, and everybody wanted to ask questions. Like what's going on. And it was also very frustrating. Like the very next day at work, the sheriff's department asked for our help when they brought him to court to escort him in, make sure nobody did anything. They were afraid because of, the fact that they had killed a 3-year-old. People were going to, and I'm like, so you want me to go protect them?
The people that cause this stress in your life.
Yeah. But, that's my job. It doesn't say I get to pick and choose. So, that was very hard.
Yeah.
There were just a lot of things about it that were hard that I never thought would ever affect me the way it did. But that that feeling that I had that night at the wooded area, I think is what made me tell my wife I wanted to talk to our pastor.
Okay.
And at that point, because there was nothing else that it could have been other than the Lord. And
you're talking about out at
when we found the
scene.
body. Yes, when we found the body, because that first scene, it was pure evil. And when I have visions of it, it's almost, this sounds really stupid, it almost has a red tint to, almost like fire or something. Like you got these lights up in the ceiling. It's almost like that red glow. And I don't know why, but when I have flashbacks or memories of it, that's how it looks to me. And so that actually started my progression of being more intentional and trying, when I go to church, I'm trying to do things that I should be doing, not just checking the boxes.
Why don't we do this? Riveting story. And I can't imagine. I know that police officers deal with things that are, and people don't understand unless you experience raw evil, which you obviously have. And to deal with that daily and somehow go into society and be a normal human being after experiencing all that. But we're coming to an end of this episode. We're going to end it here. And then when we come back, we'll pick up the redemptive side of this and how how your life changed through that. The one thing I that's crazy, like we talked about in the beginning, right? You were raised in the church. You knew God your whole life. Some people don't. They come to a crisis moment, and it sounds like maybe this was a crisis moment. God probably all along was saying, hey, Mike, I want you to talk to me. I want to spend time with you. I don't want you to just check a box. Going to church is great, but it's a relationship. And here's a moment where he said, in the midst of everything falling apart around you, this situation, he said, not only am I here because I'm watching over the body of this child, but Mike, I'm here with you.
Yeah.
Is that kind of...
Absolutely.
So we're gonna sign off right now, and we're gonna bring Mike back. Thank you so much for being willing to come back next week. Battleground Believers, thank you so much for being part of the audience. Thank you for listening to this conversation. And Mike, this was a tough one to sit through, but I appreciate it. I appreciate you being willing to open up and share.
But bringing me on.
We will be back next week. Next week we'll hear the other side, the redemptive side. Again, thanks so much for Matt Carter being back in here. It feels like we're whole again. And as we say, all that call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Battleground Believers, out.